In January of 2024, I heard that the MMORPG City of Heroes had a private server named City of Heroes Homecoming that had been given a license to officially operate by NCSoft, the publisher. And I figured I'd try it out, because I heard that there was a semi-sequel or something being made called Ship of Heroes. I don't know, that's for another day. For now, let's talk about what I experienced in my first day of City of Heroes. Specifically of City of Heroes Homecoming, because that is the specific server we played, given that it has the official license. Getting into the game was actually a challenge in itself, because there's a forum account and then there's a game account, and making them is separate and you can't make them all in the same place, and the sign-up process for both is completely different, and you need to complete certain stages before you can make a game account. It is extremely complicated, and it took me a good 20 minutes just to figure out how to actually get the game started and be able to log in. But once I got past that, I was greeted by what is called a lot a in-depth character creator, but I gotta tell you, it's in-depth in a strange way. It's definitely got a lot of options there, but this is 2004 we're talking about in terms of character creators. For this time, sure, yeah, it's great, it's awesome, but it does suffer from being from 2004. Almost everything in it is a preset. Not only are you working entirely with presets, you're working with presets that look kind of bad. It's a 2004 game. Graphically and understandably, it does not look that great. Look how old it is. But when you actually get in the game, the LOD, I just want to mention, is very impressive. This game's graphical fidelity and LOD in its current state is on par with games that are 10 years newer than it. But going back to that character creator, in the presets, a lot of the customization, or a lot of what you pick, it's not actually how your character looks, it's what your character's wearing. And this is where the depth comes in. And this is why I wouldn't personally call this depth, because in most games, you get this kind of thing through cosmetics. You get it through gear. Now, that leads me to a interesting point of this game doesn't have gear. Moving out of the character creator, sort of, it's still on the topic of it. But this game doesn't have gear, and that's why you get to choose your entire appearance in the character creator. And given that it's a private server, there's no microtransactions, no other real way to get cosmetics. Once you get into the game, there's no inventory. There is no gear. This simultaneously means that every cosmetic in the game is open to you to begin with, which can be quite overwhelming, but it gives you all that customization capability. However, it also means that you will never see your character getting stronger visibly in what they are wearing. It's not that standard type of RPG. There is no gear progression in the game. In addition to that, you get to pick what your character does at the very beginning using the game's archetype system. And it's very different from a class system, because rather than picking a class necessarily, what you're doing is picking a primary skill tree that you will have, and then you could pick a secondary skill tree that you want to combine and combo and use together with your primary skill tree. Later, when you're actually playing the game, you get to pick a third, or even more, skill trees, that some of which don't actually even appear in this initial choice right now, such as little miniature skill trees like flying. This is another instance of the game giving you so much freedom in crafting your character. No limitations at the very beginning, which again can be overwhelming, but it lets you do whatever you think is fun or fit whatever theme you want. It's a min-maxer's nightmare though, because being given all this up front without any hallways to go down, if you're looking for a meta, I don't even know if there is one. You could, if you wanted to, play a tank that is also a pet class, and the pets do the DPS while you're a tank, and then get a secondary skill tree that's for healing, and then get flying as a power pool skill tree so that you can escape danger as a mobility option. Like, you could just do that. And speaking of how that feels, the combat, there's not a lot to say on it, but there is some important notes. Importantly, the combat is slow. It's steady, I'd like to call it, rather than slow, because that might sound negative. It's not button spammy. Having come from just playing Star Wars The Old Republic, where you have to be spamming a fucking button every couple seconds, well, a couple times a second, to make sure the skill that you want to have happen happens, you don't have to do that here. If you press the button once, like let's say you have a skill bound to 3, you press it, it will happen. It won't happen immediately because there's just this animation time you have to go through for every attack. And so there's a little bit of a delay you have to get used to while you're in combat from when you click the button to when it happens. But the nice thing is that you only have to press the button once, and there's some amount of skill queuing, and it's not very bad either. Due to how slow the combat is, you're never gonna accidentally queue up a second skill because you were spamming a button. No, because it's one and done, you click the skill, once you see the animation go and click another one, now you don't have to click anything for a couple more seconds because the animations, the way the combat plays out, it's very easy to get into, especially if you're new to MMOs. The only problem I could see here is if you're used to button spammy MMOs and then you try to button spam here, you're gonna mess up a lot. The game, being 20 years old and having a lot of outdated systems, is very unique. The progression system, very unique. Like I said, there is no gear. The progression is instead using enhancements on your skills in your skill trees, which can be crafted, which can be purchased, and which can be allocated. Yes, you can assign enhancement slots. So that's another thing for min-maxers to have a nightmare about messing up. And it's based on what skills you already have. When you get them, you unlock these as you level up. That's how the progression kind of works. It does a decent enough job of letting you take things very, very slowly, even with what is apparently an enhanced leveling speed compared to how the game used to be. It is terrible at teaching you what anything does, but it's very good about just making things unravel slowly over time so that you have time to figure it out. Now, the tutorials themselves, and tutorials plural, by the way, you get to pick from at the very beginning, at the end of the character creator. You get to make quite a lot of decisions that are permanent in the character creator that you can't really change, like the skills, for example. But also, you get to pick what kind of character your character is. You get, at first, a choice between 2 different stories, and one is like the original main story, and the other is like an expansion story. The game is not the best at distinguishing these to you, but apparently Homecoming has an update planned in the future from when I'm recording this on February 6, 2024. That is when I'm recording this. And in that update, they plan to discourage you from picking the expansion story a lot more aggressively, which is good. And then even if you pick the original story, there's different things there as well, because you could play City of Heroes or City of Villains. You could play as a hero or a villain. And then there's different parts to that, because the villain story, it's a lot newer. It has a completely different feeling to the Heroes one, and the Heroes one has 2 completely different methodologies on how to progress you through the game as well. Again, like I said, a lot of choices. And there's 3 tutorials you pick from. Number 1, you get the old, quote-unquote, hero tutorial, the original tutorial. You get the old, quote-unquote, villain tutorial, original villain tutorial, and then there's a newer tutorial, which the game is not very good at clarifying that this is in fact newer, or that any of them are older. But there's the Galaxy City tutorial, which is, it sounds like a neutral tutorial when you read the description. You pick that, that's actually just a newer tutorial. It's very thematic, it's very actiony, it helps set up the story pretty well, but it's terrible at being a tutorial, and I've read similar sentiment online, because it doesn't teach you anything at all. It just puts you through a little hallway to set up the story in very story-heavy, driven sequence that you don't really see too often in the game after that. One constant theme about this game that I've noticed in everything that I've said so far and that I experienced was that the game is very open. It wants you to be able to find something to do no matter what level you are, no matter where you are, no matter how much time you have, and no matter what level your friends are. Everything can be scaled in some way. There is not level scaling on all the content in the game like some newer MMOs by default. That is not a thing. However, if you're level 40, and you just got your level 4 friend into the game, you know, he's level 4, he's level 3, he's level 2, something like that. You could go join him in his content pretty easily by scaling down to his level, or, and you could set this up to happen without needing to press any buttons or anything. He could scale up to your level and do content that's your level. And the scaling works decent enough, I've tried it, that you could do this as a completely feasible option on playing the game. Now, the only problem there is the consistency at which you experience content. And we'll talk about that later. Scaling also means you could change difficulties for yourself as well. It's customizable scaling, so you can make things a little bit weaker. You can make them a lot stronger. You could make that game think that you have more or less members in your party. There's a lot of ways to customize the difficulty of the game that you are experiencing right then in the moment. Having gotten through the character creator, having gotten through the tutorial, having gotten into the game and experienced everything that I've talked to you about so far, I was also greeted by 20-year-old control schemes. This game's controls are really weird. If you're expecting to just boot it up and be able to play it like a normal MMO these days, you're not going to be able to. The controls are very, very different. Probably the one thing that worked as I thought it would is being able to hold right click to turn and move the camera. That's the only thing that worked the way I thought it would. There is no left click to look around the camera as a little bit of like a free look and then it snaps back. No, that's middle mouse button. And then it doesn't snap back either. It stays stuck there permanently until you hit the reset camera button, which is bound to, I don't know what by default, because I had to rebind it. It's very weird. You cannot change it from what I've seen. A lot of the keybinds are weird as well. When you update a keybind, the visual of like your hotbars, for example, it does not change to show you your key bindings. So that sucks. So you never actually know what you have it bound to unless you have it memorized. It only shows the default, not even the default bindings. It shows you the number slot. So if I have hotbar 1, it'll show 1 through 9 and 0, as you'd expect. The next one, which is usually some sort of F key or some sort of combination of shift or control or alt and a number key, you'd expect something like that. Well, the controls will be set that way, but it will still display 1 through 9 and 0. Just displays what number slot, not the control, except for your inspirations. Consider these like potions. For your potions, it actually shows F1 through F4 for the first 4 slots. You could expand this to be like a dozen slots. And it never updates. It will never put more F keys to display. And if you change the controls, it will never update the controls that you see to know what slot is actually what button that you have set, what hotkey. All of those numbers, all of those things that are displayed are very inconsistent and they do not update. Another quirk with the controls and those camera settings would be that when you're flying around, you may want to look down. This is if you have the flight skill, but this is just an example. You may want to look down or look up or look around in general. You sort of can with the controls that I've listed out already. However, if you look down or up any vertical direction, your character doesn't understand that you're just wanting to look in that direction with those standard controls that I, an MMO player, came in, used, and it will actually adjust what way you're flying. So if I want to look down, then I will immediately start nosediving towards the point that I pointed the camera. If I want to look up, I'm going to start ascending. There are buttons to ascend and descend, so you could try to use that to counteract it, but it's not perfect. It's an unfortunate thing because when you're flying around, you just kind of have to know where you're going and go towards it. That's pretty much it. There's no looking around. You can't just fly over a zone and look around and, have any awareness or anything. That is an unfortunate thing. The community of this game is, in my experience, very rounded. It's not like hopping into something like SOTOR, Star Wars: The Old Republic, going onto the fleet and just experiencing the most cancerous thing in existence. It's not that. And it's not something like, oh God, I don't even know. I'm gonna go old school because this is old school. It's not something exactly like Toontown, where you could just go in and everyone is so keen on working together and being friends, and the game actually stops you from shit talking. No, this game has a little bit of everything I experienced. So on the negative side, right, it has like a global chat, and that global chat can get about as cancerous as you can expect. The game has 4 servers, and I played the server that was the unofficial roleplay server, which is called Everlasting. So this server was flooded by role players, which I generally associate with being kinder than other communities. And I can definitely attest to that because some long-term players, some role players, were just hosting these tours to show you around the game, to show you around things like player housing, and I got to see some player housing thanks to one of those tours. And the showing you around the game, it's not just a tour. You get stuff out of it, not a giveaway from the players or anything like that. No, you unlock the ability to teleport. They have these tours regularly to get new players the ability to teleport basically wherever they want in the game for free, just shortly after starting the game. And they also turn it into a little bit of a mechanics lesson. They teach you things. It's pretty nice. Community is very, very kind in that way. Hell, I was just standing around as a new player, and then someone named Samantha Gray flew over to me, gave me an item, because you could just give someone an item without permission by default in this game. You could turn that off, by the way. She asked if I was actually new or a returning player. I said I was new, had no idea what I was doing, and then when someone was advertising for one of these tours, like 2 hours later, that Samantha Gray person said, hey, look for this person, look for Resoula, me, because he's new and you should help him with the tour. And then people got in contact with me to tell me to go do the tour, which I do not regret. The tours, those were great. I learned so much about the game. I saw so much about the community. It was really fun. I spent several hours just getting tours and talking to the community. It was awesome. I also had a lot of fun with the combat and just stuff like that in general. There were some quality of life things that were missing. Obviously, it's a 20-year-old game, right? But this all was very fun, everything that I'm describing right now. But there are also negatives. Don't be so starry-eyed. You know, it's not a perfect community, especially not in just that server either. I just happened to join the game on a day where they were running some events, and these events were causing a little bit of drama, very politically motivated drama. Like this event, I don't want to get too much into it, but the role players were hosting an event. They were shouting in like the shout chats and everything. I don't really know what they all are about the event. There was a political spin on everything. They were like daring someone to start a fight with them. And then of course there were some people that were starting a fight, and the community like ganged up on those people. It was really, really weird. No insults to them, but it's just very disorienting to have the most friendly, helpful introduction that you had in an MMO in forever. And then just once you're back at the starting area, oh hey, people are fighting. People are looking for fights. It's really weird. And now, nothing I've said so far has made or broken the game for me. I thought these were all worthy of noting. I thought they might help make someone more informed about what they're getting into, what they could be getting into, what they might want to avoid coming into this game. Everything I've gone up to so far. And now I'm going to get into the most important note of my first impressions for me. And that is the questing. I play RPGs because I want to experience the story of my character. That's it, from beginning to end. That's the main reason I play RPGs. That's the main reason that I started playing MMORPGs once things like RuneScape, World of Warcraft, and etc. started coming out. You know, these story-focused MMOs that were not Toontown, that were not Puzzle Pirates, things like that, that were not MUDs like Eternal City. No, we're talking MMORPGs that have stories. This is one of those. This has a lot of stories. And from my experience in my first day, all the stories I did, dude, they're awesome. They're great. They're so much fun. They're pretty nice in terms of sizing. There's definitive parts like part 1, 2, 3, 4 to every single storyline that there is. There's contacts that introduce you to these storylines, introduce you to other contacts. Contacts come back later and you go, oh, hey, I remember when I did this for that guy. Yeah, that was great. That was fun. That was awesome. And the dialogue itself is super entertaining. The stories itself are entertaining. There's very quirky, funny characters. My favorite was Flambeau. I loved Flambeau. I think that's how you say her name. I don't know. The tutorials were voice acted. The story was not. But Flambeau was my favorite character. She's hilarious. There is some weirdness in how the stories are communicated because you could have quest dialogue in your little quest box where you expect the dialogue to be, but then there's more dialogue in the chat box, but only in certain chat channels. And then like the quest dialogue box is communicating with the normal chat dialogue channels that NPCs are speaking on. So in a lot of these stories, you're not even getting the whole quest text unless you're looking at both your chat at specific chat channels that you need to have enabled and pulled up yourself, and the quest text at the same time. It's a little confusing, but just go in making sure to pay attention to that. Personally, I think that the quests in this game are so good. so fun, and so entertainingly written that they could carry the whole game. Because, in fact, it's not just what's there by the game devs. There's also the Foundry. That's what I'm calling it. Because I played Cryptic's, the developers, other games. The Foundry in their other games, it's a tool that players can use to make their own quests, and this game has that as well. Difference being, Cryptic shut down the Foundry in their other games due to exploits. In this game, it's up, it works, and it's called Archetypes Entertainment, and it's really fun. It's really cool. There's 1,000+ quests already in there, and players are constantly adding more, and it's great. It's infinite content for those that like stories and quests, and from what I know, that's the appeal, that's what I've been told, is the appeal of this game, is its story arcs, its storylines, and just doing the content. This is not a WoW community, this is not a WoW endgame. You know, I know WoW players love their endgame. It's a really weird anomaly in MMO playing. This is the opposite of that. This is the game made for those that just love endless stories. This is like the perfect game for casual players. WoW is the radar game, and this is the epitome of the casual player experience, this game. However, this game, unfortunately, has some, especially at least on the Homecoming server here and, you know, the original game. I've heard there's one private server that doesn't have this problem, but we're talking about the officially licensed Homecoming server here. This game has a huge problem in how it unleashes all these stories onto you, the official ones, that is. You get recommended to contacts under a Find Contact button based on your level and based on your story progression. Some contacts will not talk to you if you have not completed the prior contact. That's really important to note, because most contacts, once you hit a certain level, they will not talk to you anymore. Some of them will just recommend you to the next contact, but now think about that. You're going to be playing part 2 or 3 without doing part 1 or 2 because you out-leveled part 1 and 2. You're going to be looking at part 1 and you're going to have its interest, you're going to go to do it, but then you're going to level up and now you're going to completely miss it because you got a little too much XP. There are ways in the game to turn off your XP gain. However, the game doesn't have a flashing warning saying, hey, once you hit this level, you will not be able to access this content. It's a big problem. I'm sure some vets listening to me right now already typing in, oh, but the flashback system, the flashback system. Yes, I know, the flashback system. There's a flashback system when you get to level 25, where you could go back and do important story content and things like that that you may have missed, or just do them again and you get achievements and other rewards, etc., etc. Now, notice the wording though. Important story content and things that are achievement related. That means there's a lot of content that is not in that flashback system. And it just so happened that when I went through the game doing everything that was in the flashback system, because that is what the game pointed me towards. And then the stuff that wasn't in the flashback system, which I don't think you'd have as much problem with this on the villain side due to a lot of the stuff that's not in the flashback system is older content. That stuff, the game does not point you as directly towards, especially if you do the Galaxy City tutorial, because, and yes, you know, the tutorial you pick will decide what content the game points you at. Even on the hero side, you have 2 tutorials to pick from. One tutorial will point you towards the new stuff that's in the flashback system. The other one will point you at generally nothing, which has a much higher chance of you experiencing the old content that is not in that flashback system. There's also a lot of like one-off missions as well that have very unique mechanics that are just not in that flashback system. This means without a very well put together guide on what to do, when to do it, when to freeze your XP gain, because you will out-level things if you try to do all of them. You will permanently out-level things, I promise you that. And then you will permanently miss entire quest lines, parts of quest lines, you name it, you're gonna miss it. And the game is not helpful in helping you avoid doing that. I've looked up for so many guides about this, and even the guides just cherry pick things that they think to be interesting. So for those that just enjoy experiencing stories, there is no definitive guide on how to do everything. There just isn't. So you have to find out how to min-max that yourself if experiencing story is great to you. Now, most players are not going to really care about that, but some players will, and I am one of those players. So this was a huge con to me, huge downside. It's like, it's an upside of there's so much content a casual player will never have to worry. They will always have something to do, and they're not even really going to have to pay a lot of attention. However, that makes a very disjointed, inconsistent experience, and for someone like me that likes to see stories through beginning to end and see as many stories as possible, this is a huge problem. Now, there is a private server that I heard that just sets the level scaling for everything from like level 1 to max level. That seems like a great way to fix it. Unfortunately, Homecoming does not do this, which sucks because, you know, for a player like me, this is very important. This game, in my opinion, is best for those that really like making a lot of alts and do not care about story consistency, because there will always be something, this is the bright side, right? There's always going to be a different storyline that you haven't already done that you could do in place of something that you have already done at pretty much every stage of the leveling, because that's just how much there is. And if not for story, there's also dungeons and other activities, things that will get you through an entire series of story arcs worth of levels in pretty much one run, and it's really great. Some other things worth mentioning is that the performance of the game is variable. When you put a lot of players in one location, you're going to get 30 FPS. Yeah. If you just go out into a questing area, there's not a fuck ton of players around, you could get like 120 FPS with, I'd say, pretty average hardware for today. I had a bug that only content creators will probably ever experience, or those that like to record their memories, is that if you are recording or streaming through OBS and then you go into an instance while playing the game in borderless full screen mode, the game can just crash your drivers. It did that with me across multiple different drivers that I tested it across in that stream. And that's a good time to mention how active the GMs are, the game masters, the modders, I don't know what to call them, the ones in charge of Homecoming. They're very, very active and very responsive. I filed the ticket about this and they got back to me in literally less than 30 minutes. You could get a response to a technical issue in this game at a random time of day, a random day of the week, faster than you can get pizza delivered to your house. And that's basically it. Those are my first impressions. I had a lot of fun while playing this game, I'll be honest. Like, I don't know how to get that fun factor across, but it's a very fun game. And if the things that I listed out are not deal breakers for you, then you could definitely have a lot of fun with this game. Unfortunately for me, that ability to miss quests and not, like, every quest can't be gone back to, that is a deal breaker for me. I cannot play such a disjointed experience, but I would not recommend anybody away from this game because, again, it's fun. It's only take everything I said, you know, see what works for you if you're looking for some kind of review out of this recollection of my first impressions. There's some good, there's some bad, there's a lot of reasons to want to play this superhero MMORPG, of which there are not a lot. It was fun, and I'm glad to see someone is keeping this alive, because I think this is definitely a great experience that a lot of MMO players will appreciate having if they give it a try. For now, though, that's all I have to say about this game. Hope you enjoyed watching my thoughts, hearing me ramble, seeing my experiences. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope to see you on another video.